to Brigid. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I guess to start off, the first question we have was, what has motivated you to live the life that you've lived?
That's a very big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's bit by bit. I mean, I don't think you ever wake up sort of at the ripe old age of 16 or 20 or whatever and think, now I'm going to live a certain kind of life or live doing. You take step by step by step, and you redirect yourself every now and again, I think, too. So it's kind of, well, what were the influences on me as a young person to get started on a particular path? And that was, first of all, as a teacher. And then I joined a religious congregation. I wasn't sure whether that was what I was going to do for the rest of my life or not, but it's turned out to be that. And I suppose basically I was interested in young people, but I was interested in helping, and bit by bit I've become, I suppose, more sure that we can help in bigger ways than we think. Not massively big ways in that one person can change the whole world, but any one person, and particularly with some other people, can actually make some difference and can, get ripples sort of happening, ripples that ripple out, and then other people do things too, and gradually things do get, changed. Not always in straight lines, but yeah.
Definitely. And just building onto that and tying in the theme of Dirrum this year, can you share one or two instances where the notion of Sonder has become apparent to you?
Yeah, that certainly strikes a chord with me, in that I have a thing which I often say to young people: every person's life is as precious as everyone else's, and that goes beyond human life too. But for the purposes of what I am involved in, which is to a large extent working with asylum seekers, but I also do some work with other groups like young Indigenous people, and I've done some stuff on the climate change arena too. So it's really important, I think, that if we're going to change the world so that racism is not a big force, so that we don't feel entitled ourselves to a great life, irrespective of whether that's damaging the possibilities of a decent life for other people. It's really, really important that we all as individuals just accept or work through what it means to say every single life is as precious as every other single life. And it doesn't matter whether you come from Ukraine or Bangladesh or Myanmar or Sudan or Iran or Iraq or various African countries, where most of those, there's a significant number of people who are nowhere near as privileged as I am. And so step number one is always recognising that I am privileged to live in the country that I live in, to have the things I have. But then after that to say, well, can I do one little bit to sort of even things up a bit, to make sure that I and people like me don't remain privileged at the expense of other people and other living things too. So, I mean, that often occurs to me. I've just got two people who I've been working with just this afternoon, and I had to make certain that I told them I had someone I had to talk to at 4:00, because one of them is still outside, and she's a young woman from Iran and very bad state at the moment. She's going to be homeless any minute, and the man before that was homeless. And they're both asylum seekers, and they've ended up here in Australia, and Australia has not given them a visa to stay, and so they're just sort of in no person's land, limbo, just floating really. And so we're trying to say, well, we'll give you a bit of money and help so that you're not on the street, because there's sort of nothing that's decent about having some of our people on the street. But then after that we take some steps to try and regularise your situation. Whether we'll be able to do that or not, I don't know. We can for a number and we can't for others. But we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how people can get some kind of visa that gives them the right to be here, to live decently, to get a job, to have work rights. Many of them haven't got that, and so on. So that's what I spend a lot of my time doing, and I think it links up with your idea of Sonda.
Definitely. Yeah. I think we've got time for one more question. Do you reckon? Yeah. So if you weren't already aware, those that will be watching this on Saturday night are primarily young people. And so we were just wondering, as kind of a closing message to our audience this evening, what advice you would give to us as young people who want to go forth in helping change the current situation in Australia with asylum seekers.
Thank you. Well, I think first of all, use your voice. No one can take that away from you. And your voice might be mainly talking to people you know, talking to people at home, talking to people at school who are not perhaps so au fait with the whole issue of asylum seekers, but then more, spread out a bit more and risk a bit more too by going to your local member of parliament and saying to them, they'll be in the shopping centre somewhere near all of you, and say to them, I'd like to ask you, will you intervene and try and get some more rights for people who are seeking asylum? Because we heard the other day that, there are many people with no money, nowhere to live, and they're at the end of the road. They haven't been given a right to stay in Australia, and yet the person who is talking to us, who has a lot to do with asylum seekers, she says that a lot of those have every right to be seeking protection, because the people I know who are failed, most of them have a really legitimate reason for being here in Australia, most of them. Why do they get failed? On all sorts of technical reasons, and often because they're not given enough help to actually put their story right. And also sometimes because our criteria are so narrow. But, they are people who will be persecuted in their own home. And I don't think Australia can send them back anywhere. So what are they expected to do? What's going to happen to them? So use your voice. And then if you possibly can, there are people around, groups around who are trying to do something about the people who are at the bottom end of this line, this road. And they're the ones who are homeless or very near to homeless, who are mentally ill, physically ill. And there are lots of groups, or there are groups in every place at any rate. And you can work for them. You can raise money for them. I know raising money, sometimes people say, oh, well, it's not much. Well, I can tell you from where I am that's the only way we can keep people alive, and it's as dramatic as that, is if we have some fundraising and get money. So you can do that. When you've left school, some of you are close to that, there are groups that you can join that are volunteered groups, just to befriend. We have a program as part of our program that is just befriending people. So we link people up with, people who would like to volunteer, and particularly if they're young, we link them up with young people. If they're older, link them up with older people, and so on. So those sort of volunteer programs are extraordinarily good, but for both people. They get, if you're a person volunteering yourself, you get a lot out of it, and if you're the person being helped, you certainly get a lot out of it too. So I think there are lots of things, but risk a bit as young people. Don't have to be so safe that you never do anything that's going to ruffle the feathers of somebody. Don't worry if you ruffle a few feathers. Okay?
Definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good on you. And have a good time, okay?